Do not take complete rest if you have an injured arm or leg. There is a way that you can potentially speed up recovery of that injured arm or leg by training, and I'm going to show you how. It is known as the cross-education effect, or cross-education phenomenon, or cross-training effect, etc. There's a few different names for it, but cross-education is the main one. And it's the idea or theory that if you train one side of the body, one arm or one leg, for example, my right arm, those strength gains I make on this arm, some of those are going to transfer to my left arm. And that's from not training this other arm. So for example, I have a wrist injury on this arm. I cannot perform any pressing, pulling, any upper body weights. So I train just my right side. I'm going to see strength improvements on my left side. Now this may seem like hogwash, voodoo. However, it's been proven time and time again within the research. I'm going to take you through some of that. So here's the first thing we see within the literature. We see that dynamic contractions, so your typical eccentric, concentric, for example, performing a bicep curl going up and down, versus an isometric, which would be, for example, a static hold. The dynamic contractions show a far greater transfer of strength from the trained limb to the untrained limb. So we see a 15.9% increase or transfer of strength, and then 8.2% increase in strength in the untrained limb for the isometric condition. So contraction type does play a role in the cross-education effect. But is it just the contraction type? Is this the only thing that matters when we're looking to improve strength in the untrained limb? So it seems that strength gain is the most important aspect for the cross-education effect. And I mean strength gain within the trained arm or trained leg. The stronger you can, or the more strength you can gain in that limb, the more strength that will transfer to the other limb. So if we take a look at this study using one arm bicep curl, and they did this over 5 weeks in the dominant hand, they either did a traditional set, which is 5 sets of 6, or they did a cluster set, which is 30 sets of 1. So essentially you're able to maintain rep quality and rep velocity for the 30 sets of 1 because you're taking a rest between every single rep versus performing 5 sets of 6. Now, this traditional set group had the greatest velocity loss during the set. They also saw the greatest increase in 1RM strength, and was the only group that saw a significant increase in 1RM strength, whereas the cluster set group did not. And they were the only ones to see a significant increase in strength in the untrained limb as well. So the cross-education effect may also be velocity specific, meaning the speed that you train the trained limb is what will transfer to the untrained limb. So one study looked at performing fast movements on an isokinetic device, or fast eccentric movements, and they found that the fast eccentric movements on the trained limb transferred to the fast eccentric movements on the untrained limb. However, it did not with the slow eccentric movements. Now, within the study, you see that only the fast group improved strength, which we talked about before, the strength being the #1 factor. So they were the only group that improved strength. So they were the only one that saw the transfer. However, what was interesting is the fast eccentric group did not transfer those strength gains to the slow eccentric protocol in the untrained limb. So potentially there is a velocity specific nature within cross-education. Now this may not be too practical regarding if you have an injury, you just kind of want to bring that strength back. Having a stronger limb can potentially help you recover from the injury faster. That is why before people go into surgery, they're often given a pre and post-surgery training program to make sure they have the strength going into it. And people who are stronger typically recover faster from their surgeries. So I mean, even if it's not a serious injury for surgery, having a stronger limb and maintaining that strength when you're injured is obviously important for when you're returning back to performance. Now, potentially another paper using a very similar protocol also found that, hey, maybe these cross-education effect is also contraction specific. So eccentric training on one limb will transfer to eccentric strength on the other limb. So typically you may want to use isometric and dynamic contractions depending on sport. For example, grapplers will often have a lot of isometric actions within the sport, for example, with gripping. So if you do have a wrist injury, you may still want to do isometric work with your grip to transfer to the other side, as well as the dynamic area to increase strength faster. So how often should you train the uninjured side if you have an injured limb? Now, many people will avoid training the other side of their body thinking they'll become asymmetrical, too strong on this side, imbalanced, etc. However, just think how long it takes for you to build strength. You're not going to become imbalanced in 2, 3, 4 months. And even if you do, that doesn't matter. You're going to get this cross-education effect, speed up the side of the body. And if you come back to full training, you can add a little more volume to your quote unquote injured side or your recovered side to bring that back into balance if you need to. But train the other side. Now, how often you should train it? Well, there's a research paper that actually took daily training with a hand gripper versus more spaced out training, for example, 3 times a week. And obviously within this study, there's something that's not so intense. They found that daily training sped up this cross-education effect. So in around 12 to 15 sessions it takes for this cross-education effect to show up. Obviously, if you're doing daily training, that's within 2 weeks. With the group that was doing it 3 or 4 times a week, I think it took them around 28 days. So you can speed up that cross-education effect by training more often. Obviously, you're not going to be doing hard single leg squats on one leg every single day because you're just not going to recover from that. It's going to be too taxing. So obviously, when you're doing something like this, it's got to make sense in the bigger picture. So if you're doing smaller movements, things that aren't going all the way to failure or fatigue, you can do them more often. Every now and then you might do something a little harder. But doing something every day or every second day is better than doing something 2, 3 times a week in this instance. And if you're injured, you're likely not able to do anything else anyway. You're not going to be at training, rolling, sparring, etc., etc. So you have the time to put into your rehab, and you have the time to put into training the other side of your body to get stronger and to transfer strength to the other limb. So please make sure to like this video. Let me know down in the comments, is this something you were aware of? Do you train the other side of your body when you were injured? Do you avoid it? Is this something now that you will do going forward if you do have an injury? Down in the comments, let me know.